usually privately owned. Sometimes it's open, sometimes not all.
Thanks for coming tonight. You guys want to grab your seats and we'll get started? Thank you for coming out to the second ONREIA meeting. This is going to be hopefully the second of many. If you were here last month, you'll know that we're going to do 10 a year, so we'll just miss probably July and December. But every other month besides that, we're going to hold a meeting. It'll change maybe the day. It could be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but generally around the third week of the month. I'm really excited to have you guys back here again tonight, and if it's your first time, excited that you came. I hope you keep coming to this and find value. I'm super excited for the two speakers we have tonight, and I think you're going to find a lot of knowledge tonight, whether you're a seasoned investor or just someone looking to get started. Thank you again for coming. So I'm going to turn over to Jen to get us started.
Using the BRRRR investing strategy, Matt has built up a portfolio of over 17 properties consisting of over 70 units and over 100 tenants. And in 2016, he co-founded London on Fire, which is a financial independence group focused on helping people get control of their financial lives. He is a big supporter of social media, and you can follow him on YouTube. He actually he's documented quite a bit of his real estate investing on YouTube, so he will probably tell you more about that. He began in 2010 with student rentals, and again, using the BRRRR method, was able to really explode his portfolio, and he's going to tell us more about that this evening. So I'd like to welcome Matt McKeever.
Thank you very much. So anyways, this is my YouTube channel, so also, since you got your cell phone out anyways, why not subscribe if you're not already subscribed? Smash that like button and all that good stuff. But I thought, quite recently actually, I gave a talk at Lyric. That one was focused a lot more on financial independence, retiring early, and I see a lot of familiar faces from that one, so I figured let's just mix it up a little bit. So this talk, I'm really going to talk through you guys my real estate experience. So the way I got started in real estate investing was, like a lot of us, I stumbled upon Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so that's a book that I think you're going to find is a common theme for a lot of real estate investors. I expect, how many people here have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Yeah, so it's the gateway drug for a lot of us. And I read it in university and I was hooked from the moment I read it. Just the idea of passive income was so attractive, the idea of dropping out of the rat race, the idea of not having to answer to someone else in order to be in charge of my own life. And particularly the thought of having to work at a day job for 40 plus years in the hopes that you're going to have a pension or that CPP will be there or whatever your plan is. And it just seemed really naive and foolish to me personally. The idea that we just kind of, the most important thing, like our entire lives, we just kind of put out there into the ether and we just follow what's common knowledge, what the common person tells us, when a lot of us actually want to be above average. We want to be unusual amongst unusual people. It's a quote I stole from a Joe Rogan podcast. But so essentially the way I got started in real estate investing was 2010, I was 25. I had a good job, good white collar job, working as a CPA for a firm here, BDO. And essentially it was good. It was really good. But the thing was, I noticed frequently throughout the partners at these firms I was working for, they work crazy hours. And so circling back, when I first started in accounting, my very first tax season, I was working in a small office for BDO in Mitchell, Ontario, and the partners, it was the first time they'd ever had a junior accountant, so they didn't really know what to do with me. And they found themselves with this junior accountant, they're not really sure what to expect from me, and so they're trying to figure out how many hours a month should they be able to charge on my behalf. And they decided, well, why not just make it equal to what a partner does? And so that ended up working out to over 200 hours chargeable per month. And it took me a couple days first to realize that they hadn't made a mistake, that was actually their expectations for me, was to work over 200 hours a month. And if you're not good with math, the 240 hours chargeable they wanted, it worked out to about 10 hours a day, every day. And I was just like, oh my God, no. I'm making $33,000 a year in this white collar job, and someday I can make six figures and stuff. But I'm dependent upon getting the right promotions. I'm dependent upon getting the right approvals, and I'm dependent upon shaking the right hands, kissing the right babies. I've just never been that sort of person. I've been always consistently drawn towards entrepreneurship, and I think a lot of real estate investors feel the same way. And what draws us to real estate investing in particular is the idea that it is entrepreneurship in one sense, but on the other side, it's actually kind of a cookie cutter approach. It almost feels like franchising. There's a certain safety in the idea of getting into real estate investing. It's something that even people that aren't entrepreneurs, even people that aren't investors, will still frequently comment on how real estate, buying their own house, was one of the best investments they ever made. I think that could be made up, you could debate about that fact, but at the end of the day, most of us do need a forced savings plan in order to save anything, and that's why so many people are drawn to real estate investing. And so 2010, bought my very first student rental, and if you're not familiar with the student rental market here in London, Ontario, it's very lucrative. It's probably the best cash flowing properties you're going to find here in the city, and the reason for that is their high management, and it's a niche that not necessarily a lot of people want to get into. It's a niche that has a lot of bad marketing. It's a niche that gets a lot of horror stories. And again, I have my fair share of them, but what you need to realize about a real estate horror story is, in fact, you've built that into your spreadsheets, you've built that into your estimates, so it shouldn't really be catching you off guard. It shouldn't actually be throwing you completely off tilt on your financial projections. And so I essentially acquired a property a year up until 2013. So at that point in time, I had 4 properties. It was doing really well. I had to kind of keep it secret from my partners because once they found out I had 2 rental properties, they dropped kind of hints, comments, or just kind of little backstabby things during meetings or performance reviews. Things like, oh, Matt's got his real estate portfolio, he doesn't need a raise. Or, oh, Matt's got his real estate portfolio, there's no way he can be focused on the partner growing. And that was true in their minds regardless of whether that was true in reality. It didn't matter that I was still actually working those 10 hours a day every goddamn day. But in their minds, there was no way that I could be that focused when I had other things on the go. And again, this just really solidified for me the idea that, you do need to look out for number one. And I think that one of the best ways of looking out for number one is by building a real estate portfolio. It's what I've been drawn to. But the problem was in 2013, I had these cash flowing student rental properties, things were going really well, and I could see how finally I could maybe save up more money in 1 year to buy more than 1 property, because that's why I had only been buying a property a year, was simply because of the fact that I need to save up the next down payment. And that slowed down the velocity of my money. And we'll come back to the importance of velocity of money in a second, but I went into the bank in late 2013. There had just been the Fanshawe riots. I guess it was 2012 actually, Fanshawe riots, and I wanted to buy more because I knew it was a great buying opportunity. And the bank said, you know what, like, you're 27, 28 at the time, you're doing really well for yourself, but no more mortgages, you're tapped out on mortgages. And I thought, oh shit, like, I finally had it figured out how I was going to save up more money and be able to buy the next couple of properties, but now I didn't have access to leverage. And it was a really frustrating experience for myself because all of a sudden I thought that by building up real estate, I was building up this freedom, and now again someone was dictating to me the terms of my freedom. And I really didn't like that. And so I said, okay, how do I get another mortgage? And they said, get a better paying job. And I said, fine. And so for 2 years I took off of real estate investing. I don't recommend doing this, we'll get to why. But I took 2 years off of real estate investing just to get a higher paying job, to get close to that 6-figure income so they would give me another mortgage so I could buy another property so I could get my freedom. And it seemed kind of like a vicious cycle. And finally, in 2015, 2014, I bought a 4-plex in Woodfield. And so it was a neglected property, it had been run down, beat down. We found it privately, and like Jeff was kind of mentioning, there's no deals right now in the MLS. This was a while ago, so there was deals, but even then, the better deals were private deals. And so we bought this property, myself and my partner, Adam Steeper, and we did all the renovations ourselves. We poured ourselves, our sweat equity, our time and effort into it. We bought this property for $385,000. We spent about $40,000 on renovations, and that's neglecting our time and effort. So maybe add on another $40,000 for our effort there if you were to hire it out. But by the time we were done, the bank and the market agreed with us that that property was now worth closer to $570. And so all of a sudden, like a little light bulb clicked, and I was like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to get access to my equity now. This is how I'm going to be able to speed up the velocity of my money, because the problem was always that I could find these great cash flowing properties in London, originally on the MLS, and then finally privately, because the MLS started drying up because all you guys started competing with me, but I won't hold it against you. And essentially, I realized that, oh, okay, refinancing, getting access to the new equity through the sweat equity, that's going to be the way that I'm going to build up my portfolio. That's the way I'm going to finally speed up the velocity of my money. And around that time, I stumbled upon Bigger Pockets, and they had this sweet term called BRRRR. And so BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. And that last R is the most important R, the repeat. And so essentially, I took this cookie cutter approach in 2016 and started buying properties rapidly. And so essentially, I documented on my YouTube channel. You can see everything there, so I won't bore, I know a lot of you have watched the videos already, so I won't bore you with all the details, but essentially, through some good negotiating with my realtor Jeff, we bought a duplex in 2016 for $110,000. It was $132,000. Kellen had walked through it and decided it was a bad deal, so thankfully he left that for me. And so I bought it and spent $12,000 in sweat equity on the property in order to fix it up. And so essentially bought it for $110,000, renovated for $12,000, and the renovations, I think, a lot of people talk about how you make your money on the buy, and I agree with that completely, but you can really increase your margin on the renovations. And I think that that's an area that myself and a few other people here I know personally have really focused on these strategic renovations. How can you stretch your dollar to the maximum in order to get the maximum value out of your investment? And so for me personally, the best ways to get the maximum value on your investment are things like adding dishwashers to units, adding laundry to units, because I can directly attribute those costs to the revenue that they're going to generate. So for example, I can buy a used dishwasher on Kijiji right now for 50 bucks. And I'll scroll through Kijiji, find that white dishwasher that is 5 to 10 years old. You can go on Appliance 411, look it up, as long as you got the make, model, and serial number. Everyone will share their serial number of their appliance, because why wouldn't they? And I can find out the age, buy it for $50, install it myself for free, and maybe like 20 bucks in parts tops, or I can hire someone out and maybe it's going to cost me $100, $200 to get that dishwasher installed. Let's even say it's $300 to get that dishwasher and get it installed in my unit. I can increase my rent by $50 a month. And I know that because that's what I do. It's my business model. And so that's like a 6-month payback period. Worst case scenario on this used dishwasher, breaks down, fine, you go buy another $50 or $100 one if you're feeling really spendy. And same goes with laundry. And so what I do is put laundry into my units. And again, first of all, these renovations not only are increasing the rent you're able to actually charge your tenants, but you're actually increasing the profile of tenant as well. Just think about it from your own perspective. Do you want a dishwasher? Do you have a dishwasher in your own house? Do you have laundry? Do you want laundry in your own house? And what sort of tenant does that attract versus the tenants that are willing to, go 5, 10 blocks in order to use the laundromat? So with the laundry example, again, we're talking maybe between $200 and $500 to buy the used appliances on Kijiji, and then again, maybe $500, $1,000 tops is the most I've ever paid in order to get laundry installed in a unit where it wasn't previously. So let's call it $1,500 all in. I can usually increase my rents by $75 to $100 a month, and the tenants will be very happy with this offer simply because they're often spending $50 to $100 a month on doing their own laundry, and that's not including the hassle of actually having to take that laundry to the laundromat, right? And then forgetting your detergent or whatever it is. And so I'm able to, through these strategic renovations, really increase the value proposition I'm making with my tenants. And so that's where the re-rent out comes in the BRRRR. So we got buy, so buy that little duplex for $110,000, spend $12,000 on strategic renovations, increase the rent from what was $600 and like $500 a month. You can fact check me on my YouTube. I'll maybe mess up on a couple of the fine details, but increase that to $1,550 a month in gross rents. And then what happens is, now that you have a nice looking new property, you've also done all the basic lipstick renovations, things like painting, changing the flooring. Personally, I almost never replace kitchens. I can almost always find a way to paint the kitchen cabinets and doors the boxes and then just put a new countertop in. You can get like a used Habitat for Humanity sink for like 50 bucks, and you're good to go. You have almost a brand new looking kitchen. And even if you do have to go buy new boxes, new doors, Habitat for Humanity or Kijiji again will be your best bet. Find that used kitchen that someone's upgraded into a brand new IKEA. You buy it for 500 bucks to 1,000 bucks, paint it or sand it, stain it, whatever you want to do. And all of a sudden you have a brand new kitchen that a lot of people would spend tens, if not more than $10,000 on, versus I'm spending like 5,000 bucks, and that's including getting it installed. And so I was really just focused on stretching my margins while still increasing the value proposition for my tenants. And what that resulted in was when the bank comes through to refinance it, they see your new fancied up property, they see your increased rents, they see the better tenants that you now have in the property, and they'll agree with you. This property, because of your sweat equity, because of your strategic renovations, because you bought it at the right price, yeah, it's worth more. And so in my case, with this shitty little duplex on Elias Street, it ended up being, they appraised at 150. At the time, I was still kind of conservative. I probably could have pushed them even higher on it. But what that meant was, in under a 6-month period of time, I'd spent $2,000 plus my holding and closing costs on this property. Because I bought it for $110,000. I'd spent $12,000 on renovations. The bank agreed it was worth $150, so they're going to give me an 80% loan to value on that property, which means I now have a new mortgage of $120. I pay off the old mortgage plus pay off myself for the money I put out, and now I'm just out of pocket $2,000 on a property that's cash flowing somewhere between $300 and $500, depending on whether you're doing maintenance and you want to include a vacancy allowance or not. And that, to me, that was critical to me speeding up the velocity of my money. And in addition to speeding up the velocity of my money, the other thing that really clicked for me in 2016 was stop using my own money. And so that was really important. And I know a lot of other successful real estate investors in this room use it too, like Sean and like Dan. And a lot of us, either we start off using our own money and transition to not, or we start off not using our own money and never touching our own money. And the reason for that, again, is you're able to speed up the velocity if you're using other people's money. And the way, it can be really difficult at the start trying to attract joint venture partners. How can you convince someone to partner with you? How can you convince someone to hand over their hard-earned savings and to let you go gamble in the real estate market? And it really comes down to documenting what you're doing. You can tell people all day long, but they won't pay attention. And so back when I was 31, so that's 2 years ago, I'm 33 now, I quit my day job, going all in on real estate, and I'm trying to convince my friends that they should be doing this as my money partner. I would write these essays to them. They'd be like 5,000 word emails, and a week, weeks, months would go by, and there wouldn't be a single reply, because no one's got the time for my TLDR. And that sucked. And I was like, well, I don't understand how anyone actually gets other people to give them money. Like, how do you do this? And that's where YouTube kind of came in for me. YouTube was the opportunity for me as an introvert to have a one-to-many conversation. And that's what's really important, is that not only do you want to speed up the velocity of your money, you want to speed up the velocity of your time as well. And so the best way to do that is to have these one-to-many conversations. It's the reason I'm willing to get up here and give talks. It's the reason me and Jeff do things like the Wyville Limo Tour. It's the reason why I started all those different meetup groups, because getting to know people, getting to network is so important, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's a waste of time, trust me. Everyone in this room's already solved whatever problem you're currently struggling with. And so you can either go through the school of hard knocks yourself, or you can reach out and build a network and have that network solve the problems for you. And I constantly use my network to solve my problems for me, because I'm really lazy. It's why I wanted to quit my day job in the first place. And so as an example of that, by building up these communities like London on Fire, like the Social Lab, when me and Jeff decided that we wanted to start up a real estate conference here in London, we're able to reach out to our network, and we have an army of volunteers, or voluntold, whatever you want to call them, but they're willing to go to bat for us, and that's huge too. And so YouTube is what gave me the platform to get people willing to go to bat for me, even complete strangers. And what's amazing to me is a few weeks ago, me and Jeff were at the RAIN conference, Rain's Acre in Toronto, and there was literally people who came up to me that never met me before in my life. They'd never even commented on my YouTube channel, and yet they started having a conversation with me, and we're not talking about the weather, we're not shaking each other's hands and introducing names or trading business cards. They're getting right to the point, and that's really speeding up the velocity of my time. Because what ends up happening by creating yourself as a network, as the center of a network in particular, people come to you with their problems. And what most people don't realize is you either got problems or profits. And so you figure out which one you want, but I'd rather always solve the problems and get the profits than simply have a giant pile of problems. And again, outsourcing it to my network by having people that I know have done this before, people that have gone through that process. It makes such a world of difference. Whereas back in 2012, 2010, I was trying to be a lone wolf. I thought I could do it all myself. And you can. You definitely can do it all yourself, but at what cost? And at what cost of time and the velocity of your time plus the velocity of your money? And so I think that's what I really wanted to highlight for you guys is the importance of looking at how you can scale your actions. Because I know a lot of you here are successful real estate investors, so I didn't want to bore you with just the basics of what is the BRRRR investing strategy. The BRRRR investing strategy is a fantastic way to speed up the velocity of your money, but more so, once you're at that stage or you're ready to go to the next level, start networking, and you need to network hard. And you've taken the first step by coming out to events like this, which is really important, but you just need to constantly be networking. You need to have an army of people that are working on your behalf. So literally later tonight, I might be having a conversation with one or two of you, but I know that there's going to be other people talking about me in the room. And that's a really powerful thing. Because again, it's scaling my actions, it's scaling my efforts, because I am a very lazy person. It's why I didn't want to make partner at age 25. It's why I quit the rat race at 31. And so I know some of you may be thinking, hey Matt, I love my job. I'm not even interested in this idea of financial independence, retiring early. And so just curious, I know at least a few of you, who's heard of the term FIRE, financial independence, retire early? Just raise your hands if you have. Okay, so maybe half. And so I get the concept that maybe you work for a not-for-profit and you literally are changing the world. I definitely wasn't changing the world when I took my white collar in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm just trying to change the balance of my bank. But even if you are changing the world, sometimes your job changes, and it's not necessarily you changing. You can get downsized, your organization can just roll up, it can be acquired. And that's kind of where I found myself in 2016, was working for this pharmaceutical company. We'd gone through a series of acquisitions and mergers. I explained all this to the layered people, so I won't bore you with all the details, but essentially what happened was, I was working for a publicly traded pharmaceutical company, and things were pretty good, and I was enjoying it, I was being challenged, I was taking on all sorts of interesting projects. But, you know, we started acquiring some companies, and some of the business methods we were using I found less palatable, and then what ended up happening was the roles were reversed, and all of a sudden we got acquired. And so I'd literally been through this process before. I knew they were going to shut down our London, Ontario office. And because of the fact that I built up this real estate portfolio, because of the fact that I'd taken the time to learn about financial independence and really focus on what matters to me, what's adding value to my life, and subtracting everything else, subtracting all the noise, again, so I can scale up my action, so I can increase the velocity of my time, that allowed me to be in a position where when they started talking about shutting down our London office, and I'm looking around the boardroom to the other VPs and the other employees, and I see tears welling up in a lot of their eyes, and I see fear crossing a lot of their faces. I was just wondering about, what's my retention bonus going to be? Will I be able to buy another property with that? I don't have to go buy another property, but I'd kind of like to go buy another property. And so, again, that gave me such a position of what we call FU money, where you can essentially, you no longer are being dictated to. You get to dictate the terms. And so, you know, in 2016, when 3 days straight, a consultant from New Jersey had made my AP clerk cry for 3 days straight, normal Matt, before financial independence, before having built up that real estate portfolio, would have kept his head down and focused on building up his bank further. Whereas I finally had the position where I could approach the VP of finance and this consultant and say, you know what, I don't like what you're doing, this needs to stop. And when they started screaming at me, instead of panicking and being like, oh shit, I need to start doubling down or else they might downsize me first, they might give me a bad reference, I could say, no, no, this is not how this is going to go down. I could write a lengthy email, because you guys know I'm good at writing lengthy emails by now, to our new HR department and talk about the hostile work environment they created and the frustrations and about how abusive these consultants they were bringing from the outside were towards these new employees that they just acquired that they promised were part of the new family, part of the Airless family. And what ended up happening was that consultant, it was a Wednesday night I wrote that email, and by Thursday morning he was barred from the premises. He was no longer allowed in our London, Ontario office. He had to fly back to New Jersey that same day and explain WTF what's going on. And that was the most satisfying thing I could ever, words cannot describe that feeling of being able to stand up for yourself and know it's going to be okay. And real estate's what did that for me. Financial independence is what gave me that opportunity. And so even if you love your life right now, even if you love your job, you love exactly where you're at, it's not going to hurt you to plan for the future. It's not going to hurt you to figure out how you can maybe create some passive income. And I think real estate's a fantastic means to that end. I'm not saying it's the only means. I think it's the means a lot of us here are familiar with. And so I think that there's a lot of reasons why you should double down on areas where you already have a competitive advantage. And for me, it was that I'm a spreadsheet junkie, that I was willing to spend hours and hours on the computer virtually walking through properties in order to determine what do I think is a good deal. And I was more than willing to spend hours and hours on the phone negotiating or in person or whatever, because it all felt like a big game, because I was in charge now. I was no longer pushing TPS reports. I was pushing my own agenda rather than someone else's. And I think that that's really what I want to ground for you guys, is the importance of getting in a position of FU money, getting in a position where you're truly in control of your life, because nothing's more rewarding. And the moment you get to tell that New Jersey consultant to go F themselves, trust me, it's gonna feel good. So anyways, that was kind of, I think I jumped around a lot. I have no idea how I'm doing for time, Sean. You good? Okay. So, yeah, so, I forgot to start the timer. So anyways, YouTube to me, and social media in general, it's the new medium. And I think that real estate's an old business. It's been around for a very long time. I think it's going to continue for a very long time. But I think it's naive to be constantly using, as Jeff would say, constantly fighting last year's wars. So, just because it worked for that 50-plus-year-old realtor in your office, getting bus benches, getting radio advertisements, I don't think it's working today with today's millennial buyers. I think you need to be on Instagram. If you aren't on Instagram, even as a real estate investor, I have people DMing me every single day asking me about joint venture opportunities, asking me about wholesale deals, asking me about how I do this strategy or that strategy. And remember, they're hitting me up, they're sliding into my DMs with their problems, and those problems are really just an opportunity for profit. And so it's literally, I just have an army of people now essentially finding me profit opportunities that they don't realize that they've found and hitting me up with those opportunities. So, right? I think it's very powerful. And again, one-on-one networking is fantastic. Nothing will ever beat actually shaking someone's hand and making eye-to-eye contact with them. But you need to scale your efforts in addition to that. And that's where I think social media comes in. The ability to create a YouTube video and just have it sit there. It's going to sit there forever. That email I sent out is buried in their inbox, and that's assuming they didn't delete it or it didn't get picked up by the junk folder. Where this is going to stand the test of time, particularly with the way our Creative Commons works, particularly with the way copyright law works. Odds are this is going to be mine forever. And that's really powerful, particularly at a young age. This is just going to sit there. Who knows, maybe 10, 20 years from now, one of your little nieces or nephews or your cousin or whatever, they're going to stumble upon it and they might slide into my DMs giving me a problem in which I'm able to profit off of. So I think that's, I know a lot of us real estate investors are very focused on the next deal, the next opportunity, and I get that because I was and still am that person. It's so much fun chasing that individual deal, getting it under contract, then figuring out how you're going to make your strategic renovations, how you're going to be able to increase the rents, increase your margins, get that cash flow up, get the bank to refinance you, and then go buy the next one. And you do need to do that, and that is important. But in parallel, you should be branding yourself. If you're not branding yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice. And whether you're a real estate investor or anything else, it's attention. And so right now, I really appreciate you guys giving me your attention. It's the most valuable thing you have because your attention is your time. And again, I'm getting people's attention every single day on YouTube. I'm still a nobody on YouTube. I have 7,000 subscribers. I get maybe 40,000 views a month, which is just, it's not even enough to make a ripple in the world that is YouTube, let alone social media in general. And yet, I get overwhelmed with the DMs and the emails and the comments and all that. And again, every single one of those is an opportunity to network, it's an opportunity to learn from someone, it's an opportunity for someone to present me with their problem, which I can convert into a profit. So, yeah. Are we cool to do like a little Q&A, or do you want me just?
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, that was kind of my talk anyways. I appreciate you guys giving me your attention for so long. Very few of you were checking your phones, so I appreciate that.
They were checking out your YouTube.
Right.
That's a DM.
And that's why we're getting you a social media coach. A DM would be a direct message, so you know when I'm on Instagram stories and I'm posting that I'm here at the Lamplighter Inn and using that geotag, I can get exposed to a lot of different people. And so some of those people may not even know who I am, but they hear me rambling on about real estate, or they see me using the real estate hashtag, and they might just click on and send Matt McKeever, myself, a message and say, hey, you do real estate in London? I'll be like, yeah, I do. And so you may think that this is silly, but literally, like in January or February, I was shoveling my laneway, and like we just got dumped on with snow, and I think this is my last Canadian winter, that's a side note, but anyways, we just dumped on with snow, and I'm there shoveling and like a hot, sweaty mess, and I'm like, oh, I need to catch my breath, and I was like, oh shit, I might as well do an Instagram story. So I'm like, man guys, I so hate winter, this is definitely my last winter in Canada. And that was that, and I thought nothing of it. And then, you know, maybe the stories only last 24 hours, so it must have been within 24 hours, a guy hits me up on his DMs, he's like, hey shit man, I own a rental property on your street. I go, oh yeah? And he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm pretty sure I know which house you were shoveling snow at. He's like, I'm 2 houses down. And I was like, no way. I was like, right before we bought this property privately, I lost out on that property. And so it ended up, he got the deal. I don't think Ricky's here, but Ricky got the deal from me, and which ended up with me buying the property beside it. And anyways, this has nothing to do with me profiting, but what ended up happening was then, fast forward to me and Jeff are at that RAIN conference a few weeks ago, and Jeff's posting on his Instagram stories again, a story about some private wholesale deals we have. And so Ricky had found Jeff through my stuff, he'd seen me doing the limo tour, all that, and he DMs Jeff, and he's like, hey, tell me about this 17-unit, $2 million building. And I won't ruin this, or I can't spoil it yet, but they put an offer in on it. And that to me is the power of social media. That one DM justified the last 2 years of us goofing around on social media. So we need you to get more DMs, Dan. Yeah, other Dan?
Yeah, only Dan's gonna ask. So where are you gonna go forward with your social media? Is there somewhere where you think that might be beneficial for, like you said, networking and making deals and stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, social media is becoming a lot of different things to me. So you've probably noticed Peter on the camera. So actually recently, myself and Jeff hired Peter full-time to kind of become our full-time cameraman / a social media coach. And he's also reaching out to a few people in the, just kind of in the crew or in the group and helping them step up their social media game as well. So that's one segment of it. But for me, social media long-term, again, the reason I got into real estate was I wanted to not have to have a job. I didn't want to have a 9 to 5. I didn't want to push TPS reports any longer. And there's going to come a day when I'm not going to want to answer my phone. And there's going to come a day when I'm not even going to want to answer those DMs. And so to me, social media, I think it's going to evolve into just a platform for me to present my life and my story to anyone that's interested. And so I think that that's an important point. You can see, based on my YouTube channel, my brand name's Matt McKeever. It's not, McKeever Real Estate. It's not any other sort of thing that directly ties me to real estate, because who knows, I think in 5 years from now, I literally never want to see snow again. So I'm just going to be hanging out with Matt McKeever all the time in Costa Rica or something. And so what that means is I can just do that because I build up the real estate portfolio and I'm going to be fine because of that. But I'd rather see that evolve into, why not still get paid for going on vacation? And so just to kind of give you guys a micro sliver of what's possible with this, through the Social Lab, which is like it was like a social media incubator that myself, Peter, and Kellen started. We ended up getting a partnership with the Palisade here in London, and so they're a fantastic locally owned entertainment business. We no longer have a sponsorship for them, so I'm not getting paid for this. But what ended up happening was every Friday we could go there, we could showcase ourselves having fun there. All we had to do was post X number of Instagram posts, and we could eat, drink, and play for free. And so that was just a great way, you know, I'm going to eat, drink, and play anyways. Why not get paid for it? And so I think that that's what social media is going to evolve into for myself. As well, I think Jeff's on the same page with it. And I think anyone that's trying to do anything substantial or anyone that has an interesting story is doing themselves a disservice by not taking the opportunity of this platform. It's still the Wild West out there. You may think that, you know, like guys like PewDiePie already have YouTube cornered because they got 50 million plus subscribers. No, that's still just a drop in the bucket. Old media is dying. It's all about attention. And again, YouTube will someday die too. So maybe it becomes Twitch, maybe it becomes DTube, maybe it becomes Steemit. And a lot of us, I guess the thing to realize about social media as well is don't be that person that's yelling about the kids getting off your front yard, off your front lawn, because it's going to happen. And I think it's naive not to learn and grow with it. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either evolving or you're dying. And I want to evolve with it. And think about it this way. You may think like, oh no, I'm too old to learn about social media. I'm too old for this, that, or the other. But you're not too old to keep on top of the bylaws. You're not too old to keep on top of the fact that the Ontario lease just changed. When the market's changing, you have to adapt to it or you're eventually going to become a relic. You're eventually going to become outpaced. And so that was tangential, but social media is good, Dan. You should do more of it.